Hi, my name is Anthony, and this is Yvette. We're the two trainers for WJCC schools. We're here to give you our pre-trip, the standard for what we do here in the county. All right, I'm going to come to the front of the bus. We're going to work top to bottom, front to back. Mark compartmentalization so we don't forget anything. Starting at the top, we have 3 amber clearance lights. We're going to make sure that they are in place, that they're not cracked, damaged, that there's no moisture, and they have clarity and visibility. I'm going to work down to the school bus, make sure that all the letters are in place, that it's spelled correctly. I'm going to move to my eyebrows to make sure that they're not bent, that they're attached and in place, no visible damage. Moving to my red and ambers to make sure that they're attached, clear, no moisture, and no visible damage. Moving down to the windshield, I want to make sure the windshield is clear of debris, make sure that there's no cracks, no visible damage, and make sure that if there is a crack, that is especially not in the driver's point of view. Moving down, make sure I'm checking my inspection sticker, make sure that it is 1 in place, and 2, that it is up to date. Moving down to my windshield wipers to make that there's both in place. We can test the functionality once we get inside. Then I'm going to move down to the front of the grill to make sure that my grill is free of debris. I'm going to make sure that I don't see any visible leaks coming down in the front. Then I'm going to move to my headlights to make sure that my headlights are clear, no cracks, there's no moisture, they're intact and in place. I'm also going to take my hand, I'm going to touch them, and I want to make sure that they're not loose. Moving down to my front bumper. I'm going to grab onto the bumper, I'm going to give it a tug to make sure that it is not loose, that it is secure in place. I'm going to check my bus number, that all your proper numbers are in the proper location and that they're visible. I'm going to go ahead and grab my crossing arm. I'm going to pull it all the way out to make sure that it is free, that it doesn't get hung up anywhere. I'm going to let it go and let it come right back down. Make sure also that there is no cracks on this. I'm also going to check my license plate. Make sure that it is secured to the bumper and make sure that it has the proper stickers or it's legible. I'm also then going to get down and I'm going to check underneath the bus to make sure that there is no leaks. Certain leaks that I'm looking for is water, oil, a radiator, and power steering. So I'm now going to walk to the passenger side of the bus. As I approach the passenger side of the bus, I'm going to grab my crossover mirror, also known as your dolly mirror, preferably crossover. I'm going to make sure that it's attached to the bus, that it is secure, that there's no visible damage. I'm also going to check the actual mirror itself to make sure that there is no cracks, no damages, and that it's properly secure. As I continue to walk back, I'm going to unlatch my hood, and I'm also going to look up and I'm going to put my hand on my passenger side mirror. I'm going to make sure that it is attached, secured, that the mirrors are in place, and then I'm going to walk over to my driver's side. As I cross the front, I'm going to grab my second crossover mirror, also the dolly, but again, preferably crossover. Make sure that it is attached to the bus, that there's no visible damage, that it's secure, and that the mirror itself, there's no cracks or damages. And I'm going to continue to walk over. I'm going to unlatch my hood, and I'm going to look up at my second mirror, my driver's side mirror, make sure that it's attached to the bus, make sure that there's no visible cracks or damages. I'm always going to take my hand and I'm going to physically touch everything as I'm walking around, because if you're not physically touching, then how do you know it's secure to the bus? Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to open my hood. So as I come up to the tire, again, outside in, I'm going to start with my hubcap, hub seal. I want to make sure that all the bolts are attached, that there is no leaks from your grease and your oil that's inside of here. I'm going to also be looking for rust. If I see rust, that means there is a loose nut, and we got to get that tightened up. Then I'm going to move to my lug nuts, make sure that all my lug nuts are in place, that they are secure. I'm also going to be looking for what? Rust, because rust is a sign of a loose lug nut, and we got to get it tightened up. Then I'm going to move to my wheel. The wheel itself, I'm looking for cracks, I'm making sure that it's not dented. I'm making sure that there is no welds. If any of those things are, then we can't even drive it. You got to go immediately to the shop to get it taken care of. I'm gonna then check the brake drum on the outside here, what you can see anyways, and you want to make sure that there are no cracks, no visible damage, and then if you touch it, that it doesn't move, that it is secure. I'm gonna check my valve stem to make sure that that's in place, and make sure that the valve stem cover is also on here. Then I'm gonna move to my wheel, the outside wheel or tire itself. I'm looking for bubbles, cracks, slashes. I'm looking for any type of visible damage on the outside. I'm also going to give a little kick, make sure that it has been properly checked with a tire pressure gauge by the shop. And they do that during in-service when they change your oil and do all, whatever maintenance, regular maintenance that is needed. I'm then moving up to my tread, making sure that the tread depth on the front can't be any lower than 4/30 seconds. If you need to know what 4/30 seconds is, you can always ask the shop and they'll show you what it looks like on the tire, depth gauge. I'm making sure that all the tread is actually even in line. If one side on the inside is low and it's below 4/30 seconds, that tire is no good. You got to go to shop. They'll give you a new bus. I'm going to be checking for quite a few things in here. This is our air brake chamber. We want to make sure that it is attached, secured, and make sure that the air brake hose is attached to it, both here and here. I'm going to be looking at my slack adjuster, push rod, and cotter pins. I say cotter pins because there's more than one. You got to make sure that they're all in place. Did you get a good look at that? I hope so. All right, now we're moving down. We're going to look at our steering linkage. Make sure our steering linkage is connected to our steering box, which is mounted securely to the frame. You don't see any visible damages. That we're also going to be looking at these hoses to make sure that there is no gashes, slashes, to make sure that they are properly secured, to make sure that there's no leaking, and we also are looking for dry rot. We're then going to move into our shock absorber mount, and that is properly mounted to the frame, no visible damages. Make sure that there's no leaks, because sometimes they're going to leak down here or they could leak up here. I'm going to move up to my steering arm, and my steering arm is connected to the box, and that which goes all the way up to our steering wheel. We're going to make sure that is looks secure and in place and no visible damage. I'm also going to check my power steering fluid to make sure that it is at the proper levels, which it is. Moving up to my radiator fluid to make sure that it is in between max and add. If it's at add, what do we have to do? We got to add it. That's no big deal. We don't want to forget these right here, which are our leaf springs. Our leaf springs, we have to make sure that they are stacked properly, that they're not out of alignment, and that they're connected by these U-bolts, that these U-bolts are in place, that there is no visible damage, that they're not missing. Now we're going to move on to the oil here. First off, you can't start the engine without checking the oil. You got to do that first. It doesn't make sense for starting an engine. What if you didn't have any oil? What if it's too dark, it's too cold, and you didn't feel like looking underneath your bus, and you start the engine with no oil in it? It'd be a bad day. So I'm going to unscrew this. I'm going to pull it all the way out. I'm not going to look at it until I wipe it. And then I'm going to put it back inside, all the way down. I'm going to pull it all the way back. I'm going to look at the oil. I'm going to make sure that is in the proper operating range, which it is. Here, I'll even wipe this to show you. See those hash marks? Those hash marks is where your oil has to be. Can't be any lower. See that word says add. So if it's there, you need to add oil. Don't start your engine until you add the oil. I'm then going to put it back. I'm going to secure it. You don't have to tighten it all the way down. Just tight enough. Transmission, we check the transmission when the engine is warm. We don't do that right now. You won't get a proper read. One last thing we have to check is our air compressor, which is right here. See all these copper tubing? We're going to look to make sure that our copper tubing is not crimped, and we're going to listen for any air leaks. We'll be able to hear the air leaks better once we get the bus started if there was an air leak, but we're going to look to see if there's any visible damage and listen for any visible damage also. I'm going to check all the tubing that comes out. So we have all this tubing. All right, now we're going to move to the other side of the bus. As we walk around, we're going to leave this open because there's a couple things to check on this side. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. I'm going to check my windshield washer fluid and make sure that it's full, to make sure that it is mounted securely to the frame. I'm going to then move up to my alternator. I'm going to check my alternator, make sure that it's secure, that there's no visible damage. I'm going to check the belt that it is secured to, because the alternator is belt driven. I'm going to check my water pump, which is also belt driven. And just to let you know, the air compressor, you have to know this, is gear driven. If it doesn't have a belt to it, then it's obviously gear. If it does have a belt, then it would be belt. Pretty simple for the test. But then we're going to check our fan. We want to make sure that our fan moves freely. We're going to check for debris on the inside. I'm going to take my hand, I'm going to move the belt. And the belt can't have any more than a ½ inch of play. Any questions, comments, concerns? Oh, we got more info, so let's see what happens. I'm then going to close the hood. I'm going to latch both sides. And now I'm going to work my way back. I'm going to start with my clearance lights. I have 1, 2, 3. What am I checking for? That they're amber in color, that there is no moisture, that there is no cracks, that they're properly secured, that there's no visible damage. I'm then going to work my way down. Remember what I said, top to bottom, front to back. Work my way down. I'm going to check all of my windows to make sure that all my windows are in place, secure, that there's no cracks, there's no damage. Just a little let you all know, you need to make sure you close your windows at the end of every day. I want to make sure that emergency exit is legible, that it is in place, all the letters are in place. We're checking for our reflector strips, make sure that they are amber in color and that it is around our emergency exits. I'm looking at my writing. Williamsburg James-City County Public Schools. Make sure that all the letters are there, that they're big, bold, and all legible. And then moving over to my numbers, make sure all the numbers are there, make sure that nothing is missing and that it is legible. I'm going to look at my turn light, my turn signal, which is amber in color, to make sure that there is no moisture, no cracks, no damages, and is properly secured to the bus. I'm then going to check my reflector strip, which is amber in color. I keep saying this because you got to say it yourself during the test. And then I'm going to move down to my fuel tank, make sure that the door opens. I'm going to look for a couple things here. One, I'm going to make sure that the fuel cap is in place. Can you see that? And then I'm going to take my hand, I'm going to make sure that the fuel cap is on tight. Okay? We want to make sure that it's there and secure. And then going to bend down to make sure that there's no visible leaks underneath, because we got the fuel tank in the cage that we're going to inspect here in a little bit. But we got to make sure that there's no leaking down there. And then I'm going to work my way back. And when I come up to this amber reflector dot, that's my indicator that I need to get down, get underneath the bus, and take a look at everything that's underneath there. So starting here with our fuel cage, that it is properly bolted and secured to the frame, that there's no visible damage, no missing bolts, and make sure, we're basically just looking to make sure that it is properly secured and in place. Then we're going to check our fuel tank to make sure that there's no leaks and that it is properly mounted and secured also to the frame. Then we're going to move our way in and we're going to check our exhaust. And each exhaust, there's hangers at each point. We're going to be checking each of the hangers. There's one here, there's one right here, and then there's another one right here, that it is properly mounted and secured to the what? Yep, you got it, the frame. We got to make sure that they're all in place. Then we're going to move into our drive shaft. And we're checking, there should be 1, 2, and there's one behind you here, 3, we'll get to that in a minute. There's 3 hangers. Those hangers are properly secured to the what? Yep, you got it again, the frame. We got to make sure that it's properly mounted and secured. We're going to make sure that our drive shaft, that it looks like it's mounted, secured, and that it doesn't look like there's any visible damage. Then move into our air chamber. There should be 2 air tanks. Sorry, not air chambers, air tanks. And we're going to make sure that it's properly mounted to the frame. And we're going to be checking the hoses to make sure the hoses, that they're not dry rotted. We're going to be listening for leaks. We're going to make sure that they're secured and no visible damage. All right, moving on back. We're going to come back to the air chambers. And these air chambers, there should be two, that they're properly mounted, secured. We're going to be listening for air. We're also going to be looking for, make sure that there's no visible damage. We're then going to move to our air chamber hoses, air brake hoses. Make sure that they're properly secured to the air chamber itself, and that we're also, just like we did on the front, we're looking for dry rot, cracks. We're listening for air. Make sure that they are properly secured and mounted. Then we're going to be moving to the push rod, slack adjuster, cotter pins to make sure that they are properly secured and mounted, that they're all in place. We're going to take a look at our differential just to make sure that there's no leaking. That's the main thing that you want to look for. And then while you're under here, you can also look between your tires. We're going to do that at a different spot. And you can also take a look at your leaf springs. We'll hit those here in a minute too. Then we're going to come out. Then we're going to continue to move on in the back. Now that we're out, remember we stopped right here to get under. We continue right here to move back. We're going to stop right here and we're going to check inside this box right here. It says emergency reflectors. How many should there be inside? Oh, 3. Yeah. So we're going to open up our box. We're actually going to open it. And we're going to touch all 3 to make sure that all 3 are there. We're going to close it up. Make sure that it is also latched and secured. You don't want to drive down the road and it opens up and stuff goes everywhere. It gets a little weird. All right. Coming back to the back tire. Just like we did in the front, we're going to do in the back. Outside in. So for in the back, we got a couple different words, a little different terminology. So this is your axle cover and your axle seal. We're checking again the bolts. What are we checking for? Do you remember? Rust. To make sure that they're all secure and in place. We're checking for leaks to make sure that there's no grease. There's nothing that's leaking down, because if there's also rust, what does rust indicate? Something that's loose. Then we're going to move to our lug nuts. We're going to touch all of our lug nuts to make sure that they're all there, secured, in place. And we're looking for what again? Rust. And what does rust mean? That there is a loose lug nut. We got to get that taken care of. Then we're moving to our wheel. It's also called a rim in other worlds, just to let you know. We're going to check to make sure that there's no cracks, no damages, that there's no welds. We want to make sure that there's no dents. And the big thing is if there's a dent around here, you could lose pressure in your tire. So those are the things that you're going to look for. Then we're going to check our valve stem. And we got to check the valve stem cover. Again, we're going to make sure that the valve stem cover is not there. You could have the potential of losing air. We don't want that while you're driving down the road. But then we're going to move to our the outside of the tire itself. Make sure that there's no slashes, gashes, no bubbles on the outside. And then when we move up, we're going to move to our tread depth. The tread depth is going to be a little bit different than is in the front. We can be as low as 230 seconds, and that's usually the wear bar that's inside of here. So when it gets to the wear bar, that indicates you're at 230 seconds. Then you got to let shop know so they can either get you a new bus or change your tire. We're going to make sure a couple other things. Air pressure has been checked by the shop during your service, and that you're at the proper air pressure. Give it a little kick. Usually that'll indicate whether or not you do have a flat. Okay? Another thing that we're going to look for is recap. You want to make sure that you can have recaps in the back. You cannot have them up front. So this line right here actually indicates that this tire is a recap or a retread, whatever you want to call it. Now that we have checked our outside tire, we're going to take a look at our tread depth on the inside tire. So the same thing, we're going to make sure that it's 230 seconds, and make sure if, how do we know that it's at 230 seconds? If it's at, there's a wear bar. Again, if it's at that wear bar, you're at 230 seconds. Take it back to shop. I'm gonna take my foot, and I'm actually gonna kick that inside tire to make sure that it's also properly inflated. We'll get a better look at it when we get around to the back. While we're back here, we're also gonna be checking our leaf springs to make sure our leaf springs are properly stacked and that they're properly mounted to the what? The frame. Everything is mounted to the frame. That doesn't look like there any visible damage. Doesn't look like there's anything missing. I'm going to check both front and back. Then I can also see back here the back side of my exhaust to make sure that there's no damage, no holes. Make sure that there's nothing swaying or loose or what have you when you're looking back there. We're going to move to the back of the bus. Back of the bus, top to bottom, rear to dead, front to back, right to back. Top, we're looking at our red clearance lights. Make sure that they are red. We're going to make sure that there is no moisture, no cracks, no damages. They're properly secured to the bus. And we're going to move down to the school bus. Make sure that it's properly spelled. Make sure that all the letters are there, that there's no missing letters. Then we're going to move down to emergency door to make sure, because this is your emergency door, or I should say one of them. Make sure that your amber reflective strip is all around the door, highlighting your emergency exit. Then we're going to check our red and our amber lenses. Make sure that there's what? Moisture, cracks, damages, and that they're properly secured to the bus. We're also going to check our eyebrows to make sure that our eyebrows are connected to the bus, that there's no visible damage, and you don't want them bent down in front of the lenses either. So then we're going to move down. We're checking our windows to make sure our windows are properly secured, there's no cracks, there's no damages. Then we're going to come down to our door itself. I'm going to open up the handle, make sure that it moves freely, and then I'm going to open the door. Make sure that the door swings freely and that it locks into place. While I have the door open, there's this thing called a seal, the weather stripping. You got to make sure that your weather stripping is properly secured to the bus, because if you don't have the weather stripping, then exhaust can leak into your bus, which is a safety hazard. We're then going to take our hand and we're going to do this to the what? The kick plate. We got to make sure the kick plate is secured to the door, and we're going to make sure that our handle also moves freely. Before I close the door, one last thing I want to check is our door strap to make sure that's connected to the bus and to the door, and that there's no visible damage and it's secure. Close the door, latch it shut, and then we're going to continue moving down. We have our amber turn signal, our red brake light, and our clear reverse. We want to make sure that these three, along with these three, are properly secured. No moisture, no cracks, no damages. Then we're going to move down to our running lights and our secondary brake lights. We're going to make sure that these lenses are properly secured, that there is no moisture, no cracks, no damages, and they're properly secured to the bus. Then we're going to move down to our what? License plate. Got to make sure it's the same on the front. Just kidding, but seriously. We want to make sure that's secured to the bus. Our amber what? Reflective tape, and our number. Our number is secure, clearly legible, that's the right number for your right bus. Then I'm going to take my hand, I'm going to grab our bumper, make sure that's secured to the bus, make sure that there is no visible damage. I'm going to move back a little bit. I'm actually going to take a little peek inside my exhaust, because birds like to make nests in there. And you don't want to shoot a bird out like a cannon. Then I'm going to bend down. I'm going to look underneath the back of the bus. The things I'm looking for are in between the tires to make sure that there's nothing wedged in between the tires. I'm going to check the back of my exhaust to make sure that there's no visible damage, such as holes, rust, so on and so forth. As you can see, I'm under here to help you out. You don't need to get under here, but you have to actually touch and point. So we're going to take our pointer. I'm going to show you our shock absorber. Make sure that is properly mounted to the frame. Make sure that there's no leaks, and make sure that there's no visible damage. This is your rear differential, again, taking a look to make sure that there's no leaking down here. It's properly secured and mounted. And your torsion bar, you can also see it again right here. This side of the bus, there's only a couple different things we have to take a look at. Also, you need to note that in the rear you're going to have red, and in the front you're going to have amber for your clearance light. So as I'm walking down, I'm also checking top to bottom, front to back, my 3 clearance lights, We're checking the emergency exit, reflector strip, the windows, the writing, the number. We're checking our tires, just like we did on the other side. Axle cover, axle seal, lug nuts, wheel, tire, depth, retread, air pressure. You're checking your leaf springs mounted to the frame, checking our torsion bar, and then we're moving forward. As we move forward, again, check your number, check your turn signal. We got to make sure that your turn signal is what? Properly mounted, secured, no visible damage, no moisture. We come to our stop sign. Make sure, one, that it opens freely. When we check to make sure it opens freely, because you have 4 lenses. You got to make sure all 4 lenses are secured, no visible damage, no cracks. We'll also checking for what? Moisture. Can't have moisture in them. Then we're going to take a look right here. There's a couple things right here. If you look here, there's a little air bulb. We got to make sure that there's no cuts, no slatches. We got to make sure that this cable right here is connected, that there's no visible damage, and there's a cotter pin right here. Make sure that cotter pin's in place. We're also going to open up this, which is our fuse box. I'm going to make sure that there's no visible damage. When I say visible damage, I'm pretty much just looking for frayed wiring. I'm looking for any signs that a wire maybe is overheating by a brown or blackish, and that's pretty much all we're looking for there. Smell, yeah, look, taste, smell. No, you don't have to taste, just smell it. All right, then we're going to move down here. This right here is your battery box. We're going to open this up. We're going to look inside. Inside the battery box, you're going to make sure that your slide is locked. 2, that you have all the connections, and make sure that all your bolts are in place and properly secured. You're checking your wire connections just to make sure that your wires are not frayed. So we're also checking our connections for corrosion. We're making sure that all our wires, they look properly, they look like they're secure, they look like they're pretty clean and good to go. Now as I move around, we're then gonna go get on the bus, but there's a couple things we gotta do before we step on the bus, and I'll show you. But you gotta come. Come on. You gotta come on. All right. So here's our door. When we get to the door, we're gonna make sure, one, that the door opens freely. We're gonna check our seals to make sure our seals are all properly in place. Make sure that there's no dry rot. To make sure that they're not torn. We just want to make sure that, one, no exhaust fumes get inside, and also we don't want any leaking because it'll fog up your windows. All right. So now I'm gonna also check my door bar to make sure that's properly secured. Then I'm going to move into here. You ready? Come on. Don't be shy. There we go. I'm going to check my steps. Make sure that there's a matting here on each steps so you won't slip, or your kids won't slip. I want to make sure that it's all properly bolted down, that none of the screws are popping up. I want to make sure that there's no welting. I'm going to check my sign, make sure that everything's spelled correctly and legible. I'm then going to take my hand, I'm going to grab this handrail here, make sure that it's properly secured and that it doesn't move anywhere. And as I move in, I'm going to keep moving outside in, and then we're going to move top to bottom and front to back again. Just compartmentalization so you don't miss anything. There's also a light here. Make sure that our lens cover and our light is there, secured, no cracks, no damages. I'm going to take a step up into the bus. Don't be shy. Come on. So I'm going to start here with our first aid and first aid kits. You should have 2, one for body fluids and one for your actual first aid. It's both first aid. To see these tabs right here, our shop is so kindly make sure that everything that is in these is in there. They have a checklist. They mounted, they secured it on here, and then they put this tab on here. If this tab's not in place, that means you're missing something and you got to go get it replaced. Then I'm going to move in. I'm going to check my fire extinguisher. There's a few things I got to check on my fire extinguisher. One, that it's secured. Okay, I'm going to make sure that's secured and mounted properly. I'm going to check what the pin has to be in place. I got to check the date to make sure the date is up to date, because if you're driving down the road and your fire extinguisher has a date, then you're not in compliance. Okay, you don't want to get in trouble for that. Then we have a gauge on here to make sure that you have enough pressure and fluid inside. And that will be a green. I don't know if you can see that or not. The arrow will be a green.
I see it. I see it.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Take a break.
I talk too
He's
much.
taking a break right now.
Here's your pointer.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
All right, at this point, you can really actually take a breather. You've gotten through a lot of your pre-trip at the present time. So, we're going to get into some more fun things. So, after you've got on the bus and you've checked all of your safety equipment, you're going to begin to go back. You're going to check your seats. So, put the key in, engine off, key to your left, because you want to make sure you're able to hear your alarms. So at this time, as we're going back, we're going to check the top of our seats to make sure that they're secure and they're locked in. That way we won't lose any students as we go back. We're going to make sure that we're checking the tops. At this point, I see that my emergency door is very legible. It's in place, and they know where they can find the door. At this time, I'm going to open my back door. You hear the buzzer, and I'll close it back down. While I'm back here, I'm going to take the time now to look at each number that is above the seats. I'm also going to take the time to make sure that my student dome lights are in place. They're not cracked, they're not broken, and each one is screwed to the frame of the inside of the bus. As I'm continuing to look, I see my emergency exit that is over top of my windows are also legible. I'm going to drop down before I begin to walk back up, and I'm going to check the molding of the floor because we want to make sure that there's not bulge. Everything is screwed down tightly to the floor so we won't have any trips or falls. Before I come up, I'm going to take and check the back of the seats. So I'm going to take and give a pull up on the back part. So we want to make sure that they are locked in. We don't want to pull the front, we want to pull the back. So as we're walking up, we're going to pull the back, and over my head there's an exit. So what we're going to do is we want to make sure that we can hear the emergency exit go off. So turn the slide and then turn it back so that we know that those buzzers are working. All buses have different alarms. So, all right, I'm going to continue to check the back. Continue until more emergency exits. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to lift my emergency exit up, I'm going to open my window. I want to make sure that in case of emergency, we are able to get out. Same thing on the other side. I'm going to pull it. All right, as I continue to come up, pulling the back of the seats to make sure that they are secured, and I have another emergency exit and a turn, and the buzzer goes off, and that is secured. So we continue to check the seats as we continue to go up. Now, here comes the fun part. I am now sitting here. I want to make sure that my seatbelt is working properly. So I want to make sure that it clicks. And I am good with my seatbelt. Okay, now that I have sat down, I'm going to go from the top, the bottom, and then I'll come over with gauges and indicators. This is called our student mirror. I want to make sure that I am able to see all the way to the back of the bus through my student mirror, that it's clear and nothing is in it and I can see my students. We're gonna drop down. I always check my little sun visor because I just want to make sure that it's structured enough so it won't flop down in my face while I'm driving down the road. Here we're gonna check the windshield. Even though Anthony had checked it on the outside, we want to just check it on the inside and make sure that it's free. We don't have anything in our dashboard that we're not supposed to have. All right, then when I bring my hands down, I'm going to check my steering wheel to make sure that I have no more than 2 inches in play, and I'm going to honk my horn. And it works very well. Okay, here we're going to begin to go to my left, and I'm going to check panel to gauges to indicators. Okay, so it is important that we make sure that we're using low and high. Our master flasher is not a low and high to our master flashers, so we're gonna leave that there. Our strobe, you want to turn it on. There's a faint noise that you will hear in the back, and if it's dark enough you can see the reflection. All right, I'm gonna check my dome driver light, which indicates that it is working and its other bulbs are in. We're gonna check my student dome lights, which are behind you, and they are on. Our boost pump, we do not drive with our boost pump. We use our boost pump during the winter months, mostly when it's colder outside. We have our heated mirror, and you'll see the red indicator comes on here, and we'll use that during the winter time also. Here we have our rear heat, which is low and high, then off. Our defrost fan, low, high, off. Our driver heat, low, high, then off. My left fan, low, high, then off. Right fan, low, high, then off. Here, there's in the little corner on your left, there is our light. So you'll see our panel lights up when we turn it on. There. All right, now at this point, I want to take the time to, in order for me to check my gauges and my indicator, I've now turned my key to the on position and waited for the ABS light and everything to go off here. Now here I'm going to check my windshield wipers, which this is my fluid. And then once that stops, we're gonna go low and high. And then we're gonna take it off. Let's take my left indicator, my right indicator, and my hazards. You can see that they're blinking. Okay. At this point, I'm going to start the bus. The noise that you hear is the air pressure that was building up. We have our oil, which is supposed to be between 40 and 60. Our water gauge, which is supposed to be between 180 and 200. My RPMs, if I give it a little gas, you'll see that it'll rise. My miles per hour will only go if the bus is moving. My volts for my battery should be between 13 and 14. My fuel should be no less than half, and you see I have a full tank here. And now that the air pressure is built up, the air pressure should be at 120. We can only move the bus if it's at 100. Okay? And we're going to perform our air brake test. We're going to cut the engine off, key on. We're going to then release our parking brake. And we're going to wait to make sure that our needle is stabilized, which now it has. I'm going to then place my foot over the service brake and push. And we're going to count a minute, and it should drop no less than 3 PSIs. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, and 60. So now that we've waited for our minute, now we're going to pump down our service brake. And as we're pumping the service brake, we see that the needle moves down. At 60, you hear the alarm goes off. And at 30, the parking brake pops out. Then at this time, we can start our engine to rebuild our air brake smackdown. Now I'm going to check my parking brake. I'm checking my parking brake to make sure that as I put it in reverse, it's holding. I put it in neutral, it's holding. Drive. And my first gear, that everything is holding. And I bring it back up into neutral. Now I'm going to check my service brake. And in checking my service brake, I want to make sure that once I put my foot on the service brake to stop, if the bus is in motion, that my service brake is going to stop. So I'm going to put it in drive, release my parking brake, move a little, and then stop, making sure that my bus doesn't go to the left or to the right. And then I bring it back into neutral and pull out my parking brake. So now at this point, I'm going to do my lamp check. So on the left side, I'm going to hit the lamp check button. Okay, great. Take off my seatbelt. Come on and follow me. Making sure that my signal lights and headlights are lighting up. My turn signal on. My light is on. My red flip light is working. Come around to the back. Once again, starting at the top. Checking my lights and making sure that everyone is lighting up. All right, and as I come around, here is my red, my amber, my turn signal. We also want to make sure that our cross arm and our red stop sign comes out. So I'm going to cut on my master flasher. I'm going to hit my start flashing, which will set off my ambers. And then if I look in my crossover mirrors, I can see them. As I open my door, I see that my crossbar comes out. And I also see here that my stop sign comes out with both red lights are working properly on them. Close my door, and then I will put my seatbelt on. I put my foot on the brake, and that turns off the lamp check. At this time, we have to make sure that we're cutting on our radio. And I will take and make sure that I'm filling out my pre-trip slip correctly. I put the date, my initials, and I would check a check mark, not a line, but a check mark will go in each square of everything that I have checked on the bus. And then I will put it back inside the sleeve, and those stay on the bus. This concludes my pre-trip.
If you have any questions, you can ask any trainer. There's 10 of us. So,
and we'll be happy to give you all the information you need Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you. It was fun.